Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual public informational meeting for state project number 97-102, replacement of bridge number 05971 on Smith Road in the town of Norfolk. There is project information on this slide on how to reach us by project email, by phone, which is a monitored voicemail line, and we encourage you to visit the project webpage at the link below. To view different captions and subtitles in Zoom, there's a bar below where you can click on CC, Show Captions. You can then click the speaking language and select which language you'd like to listen to, or see from the list shown. Closed captioning, including non-English translation options, are also available on YouTube after the event. The goals for tonight's meeting: there'll be some general housekeeping, followed by a formal presentation of the design, which will include explaining the existing conditions and defining the purpose and need for the project, as well as our proposed recommendations. And following the formal presentation, there'll be a live question and answer session to answer any questions you may have. I'll read this slide on Title VI, Civil Rights. No person on the basis of race, color, or national origin be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. We highly encourage you to fill out the voluntary post-meeting survey located at the link and QR code shown. There's also a link to our civil rights information from the Office of Equity regarding Title VI. Recording this presentation will be posted to YouTube after the event, and closed captioning translation options are available on Zoom and YouTube. This is a slide regarding Title VI, notice to the public. Very notice to the public and the Office of Equity. And then the same slide in Spanish. Following the formal presentation, there'll be a Q&A session live. To access the Q&A tool, there should be a button below on your Zoom. You can select that, and a pop-up window for the questions and answers will open up. You can type in your answer or question and hit enter, and we'll be able to answer it. If you're an audio-only participant, please dial *9 to raise and lower your hand. To reach out to us, you can contact our email at dot-flbp@ct.gov, by phone at 860-594-2020, which is a monitored voicemail line, or by the Zoom Q&A chat. Please, and if you have a question that you think of at a later date, our comment period is open until August 20th, 2024, but the Zoom Q&A is only available during this live session. This project is funded through the Federal Local Bridge Program, Design Managed by State, or DMS program. Prior to the DMS, bridges were funded on an 80% federal and 20% town match for design, rights-of-way, and construction. Under DMS, design, rights-of-way, and construction phases are now funded with a minimum of 80% federal and a maximum of 20% state funds. Design, rights-of-way, and construction phases are at zero cost to the town. Now, even though we are taking over the design on behalf of the town, it's still a full partnership, and we coordinate with the town at all project milestones. The goals of the DMS program were to provide a streamlined approach to design using our DOT resources, to aid towns in keeping their bridges in a state of good repair by effectively using funds, and to decrease typical design time from 60 months plus to 24 to 36 months, depending on permits, and when applicable, utilizing accelerated bridge construction techniques to shorten construction duration, and to increase the number of municipal projects delivered in each construction season. This is the project team from the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Our division chief is Bart Sweeney. Principal engineer of the consultant engineering group is Derek Lassard. I'm Mark Burns. I'm the project manager, and specifically in the state and federal local bridge programs. Andrew Shields, who unfortunately could not attend tonight, is the project engineer, and Zach Garino is our rights-of-way coordinator. Representing Clough Harbor and Associates, who's our consultant liaison engineer and acts as an extension of us, is Anand Sasadri, CLE team lead, and Dionis Kazada who's the project engineer. This is a brief slide depicting key structural elements of the bridge. The deck is what will support vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic. Preventing that traffic from roadside hazards will be parapets. Supporting the deck and parapet is a superstructure. In the case of this picture, is steel beams. Supporting the superstructure is the substructure, which will be abutments as shown. Wing walls act as earth retention systems, and depending on the span length, there'll be either one or multiple piers. These substructures are either put on a spread concrete footing or could be pile supported depending on the depth of rock. Bridges are rated on a scale of 1 to 9, with 9 being in excellent condition and 1 being an imminent failure. But please don't let that concern you, because if there was ever a concern, corrective action, or our bridge safety office would reach out to the town to take corrective action. This is a slide depicting different types of concrete duration. Efflorescence is a chemical reaction. This occurs when there is different chemicals inside the concrete, result in that white substance that you see that will come out of concrete at times. Honeycombing is a result of improper setting or pouring of concrete. So when concrete's poured, if it's not completely set up correctly and the forms are removed, you'll see those kind of voids right there. Scaling is a result of concrete on the outside curing faster than the inside and then leaving it more prone to damage from either vehicles or freeze thaw, things of that nature. Map cracking is when water has infiltrated and then turned to ice and causes the cracks shown. And a more severe type of scaling is called spalling, where the concrete has deteriorated to the reinforcing steel as shown. I'll now turn over to First Selectman Matt Riska for some opening remarks.
Thanks, Mark. This is not the first bridge we've worked on with Connecticut DOT. In fact, we have 4 bridges in town that we're working on right now. We work quite closely and are in constant contact with each other on what's going on. They've been very responsive to our needs. One of the things that I know we're going to focus on tonight is the Smith Road Bridge. We have discussed the Smith Road and the Old Goshen Road Bridge on many occasions. As everyone who's watching this, Norfolk knows that we lost both of those bridges in flooding in July of 2023. We're trying to put together a plan now with the DOT to tackle Old Goshen Road first. But tonight's meeting, we will focus on the plans for Smith Road, and I'm sure that we will shortly have a meeting focusing on Old Goshen Road. And for those watching as well, we are working on a plan to put a temporary bridge on the Smith Road site, and so we can alleviate some of the issues there, as well as help the DOT and the construction company that will be building Old Goshen Road to kind of alleviate some of their pain in building that bridge. But thank you very much to everyone at the DOT and CHA. As I said, we speak to each other often, and we have a very good working relationship. So thank you, Mark.
Great. Thank you very much, Matt. I'll now turn it over to Dionis so we can begin the formal presentation.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, so Bridge 5971 that carries Smith Road over Meadow Brook. It's located south of Norfolk. If you go on Route 272 south, you pass the South Cemetery. You come around Meadow Brook. There's a bridge that carries 272 over this Meadow Brook. Right at the corner of it, you will find Smith Road, which goes east out of Route 272. Right over the Meadow Brook again, Smith Road is carried on their Bridge 5971. And if you continue going down east to Smith Road, you will then go into Old Goshen Road, which was just mentioned by the First Selectman. But we'll focus on Bridge 5971. It has 2 travel lanes, Smith Road. This is an image looking west onto Route 272. The width is about 20 feet wide. It has an average daily traffic of 44 vehicles per day. That was counted in May of 2024. The speed limit is 25 miles per hour at this roadway, and it is classified as rural local road. The bridge itself was constructed in 1999. It consisted of a 6-foot diameter corrugated steel pipe. As you can see here, the culverts. They had no head walls or retaining walls, and the metal beam rails have steel posts on them, as you can see in the picture. Now, the bridge was washed out in July of 2023. As a result of that, we have done some hydraulics designs on it. So due to the watershed being 1.9 square miles, the watershed is classified as an intermediate structure for the bridge. For the design storm of 100-year, the hydraulic clear span was calculated at 18 feet with a bank full width that's from edge to edge of 19.2 feet. The underclearance is the distance from the 100-year storm to the low chord of the bridge. In this case, it would be the top of the culvert. That is not applicable since the culvert has been washed out and there is no bridge present at this moment. The freeboard, the natural freeboard is 2.6 feet. What that is the distance from the 100-year to the lowest point of the roadway. In this case, it was calculated at 2.6 feet. The minimum standard of 1 feet. Here is post-inspection. As you can see, the steel was rated a 1, which is 1 considered when it's failed, as you've seen and you know of the washout, which then reflects into the culvert a 1 as well. We just wanted to point out that prior to the failing, the railing and the guy rail were considered a 6, which is a satisfactory condition, but railings did not meet the current safety standard, and that is something that will change in the proposed ultimate. Just a couple of images of what it used to be. Here's an image looking upstream at the east, looking east on the elevation. And then here's a picture looking through the pipe itself. Now here's an image of the roadway during the washout. As you can see, the stream was overtopping the roadway, carrying part of the pavement and the culverts along with it. Then the aftermath of the culvert just being scattered everywhere. The town of Norfolk did go out and try to clean the debris and clean the pipe outside of the stream to allow a natural stream to flow through Smith Road. Here's some images prior to the washout. The railing, that's where the culvert is at, used to be. This is looking at Route 272. Then down below that, you can see what it's there today. The town has placed a concrete barrier to protect pedestrians and vehicles from going onto the stream. Hence why it's also on the other side. This is looking east, looking onto the bridge where it used to be. Here you see the railing. That's where the bridge was located. And now this is the aftermath. Just want to point out there are some utility on the northern side of the roadway, as you can see on the image here. Looking more into the stream itself, this is looking downstream. There are some debris that are going to be clear during construction. You can see the natural stream here, and also looking upstream, you can see the wide bank. Hence, we're going to propose some wing walls to make sure that the stream is mitigated in a very nice way through the new bridge itself. I just want to point out here, there is a bridge, and this is what I was mentioning, that carries Route 272 over the Meadow Road. That bridge did go through the storm and actually helped very nicely. Here's the project purpose and need. As we all know, the purpose is to replace the failed culvert with a new bridge meeting current design standard. To increase the roadway width to 24 feet is our first need. Also to provide an open span structure to facilitate fish passage, replace the bridge and approach rail system to meet current safety standards, to improve the hydraulic adequacy and the performance, and also to minimize the need for future maintenance. In our proposal is a new pre-stressed concrete deck unit bridge. Here's an image of what that is. It will be looking very similar to that. It will give us a 75-year service life with minimal maintenance that meets the needs. It will carry all weight permit vehicles, so no weight restrictions. The pile foundations are designed for scour for the stream that kind of washed out this bridge. Open bridge rail and approach rail system meets the current standards. it will improve the roadway to 24 feet wide and improve hydraulic performance. This means the 22 feet clear span will meet the bankfull width, which I mentioned earlier, 19.2 feet. It also passes the 100-year storm, which meets all the design standard for under clearance at 1.1 feet and also for freeboard at 2.6 feet. And there is also no change in backwater elevation compared to natural condition. That means that during the 100-year storm, there is no backwater upstream. All the water is actually conveying through and underneath the bridge. Some other things we want to point out, the end blocks, this is in the bridge rail, are all to the town's choice. So the end blocks can be formed with liner applied to concrete, which simulating stones. Whatever type of stones the town's choice is preferred will be proposed here. Also at the wing wall, which is this portion here, will also follow along the town's recommendation. The bridge rail can be the town's color of choice. It can be black, as seen in this image, or it could be another color. The roadway has a 24 feet, 5-inch curb-to-curb roadway width with a 3-tube curb-mounted bridge rail system that will be installed along the bridge fascia. It will also have a 6-inch cast-in-place concrete deck slab, which will protect the 1-foot, 3-inch pre-stressed concrete deck unit, which makes up a total out-to-out width of 27 feet, 11 inches. This section is pretty much cutting the bridge in half, and this is kind of what you see. Also, we just want to point out there is a 2% slope, that's super elevator, that will make sure that all the water is drained into the side of the road. Here's a plan view of the bridge. Here's the north and south arrow. As you can, and you know, Hall Meadow Brook flows from north to south along this side. Smith Road goes from west to east. The new bridge provides a 22 feet clear span. The orange represents the new bridge, the new superstructure for the pre-stressed concrete deck unit. The structural length is 26 feet 6 inch, so the edges of the total length of the bridge is a little bit longer than the clear span. This is because this is where the bridge sits on top of the abutments. The yellow is the Smith Road that will be full depth reconstructed, and in gray you find the wing walls. These wing walls, they are both flare and are to be set on micropiles founded on bedrock. Here's an elevation view, so looking from north to south. Again, as I mentioned before, the structural length is 26 feet 6 inches, orange representing the bridge itself. The units are supported by abutment and wing walls, as you can see here. They're also simulating stone masonry, as I mentioned earlier, just to look like it's stones. They are sitting on micropiles bedrock. That's what you see here, this little poles here. The exposed abutment and wing wall section, as I mentioned, will have the concrete liner. The open channel accommodates the 100-year storm, providing 1.1 feet under clearance in the 2.6 feet of freeboard that I mentioned earlier. I also want to point out that it also accommodates a 500-year storm without overtopping the roadway. That's just about the low chord of the bridge. This is the low chord of the bridge, that little yellow, orange line. Color in pink, I also want to point out the metal beam guide rail, which will be attached to the concrete end block. This is all going to meet the design standard, which did not before. Again, orienting everybody, the north arrow here, the brook going from north to south. The total project length is about 360 feet. In green, you have in orange light is the cuts and fills. The flare wing walls that are being supported, that are being proposed here, is to support those grades, those fills and those cuts. The roadway within the project limit will be full depth reconstruction, so everything in yellow will be full depth reconstruction of a new pavement for the west, for Smith Road. The utility lines, as I mentioned in the image before, which is located on the north side, will be relocated just to make sure that when the new bridge is set in place, it does not impact the existing lines from Eversource. And also, we want to point out that there is a driveway to the east of the bridge. It's this one here. That will be full depth reconstructed to make sure it matches the new profile of the roadway. Also, as you can see, the stream here, there is some riprap embankment. That's on the northeast side to protect the slope from erosion. So this stream that comes here and hits that little portion here does not create an erosion in the future. I want to mention more of the profile. So we're going to maintain the profile at the bridge, so no grade changes at the bridge. However, on the west side, going onto Route 272, we are raising the roadway, and that's going to just improve the stopping sight distance, which helps see better for vehicles who are going to turn into the intersection of Route 272. The roadway profile will be raised at the west approach of the bridge, as I mentioned before, about 1 feet. But on the east side, the roadway profile will maintain pretty much similar to existing, so not much changes past the bridge on the east side. Here is the detour. I'm sure the people that live around here are familiar with the detour using Smith Road, All Goshen Road, and Brewery Road, and then onto Route 272. It is 7 minutes long, 2.4 miles long as well. During the construction, the contractor will use the detour as they place their new bridge as they install it. This will be a one-season construction, so the detour will just be used for 1 season until the bridge is installed. Some environmental impacts. We are anticipating some tree clearing along roadway, temporary and permanent wetland and water course impacts. The bridge is located in a FEMA flood zone A, but it's not located within an NDDB area. This was depicted in December 2023. The bridge is also not located within an aquifer protection area. There are no historical impacts anticipated. There are some permits anticipated: the Town of Norfolk Inland Wetland Permit, Connecticut Deep Flood Management Certification, and the USA and Army Corps. That's pretty much a self-verification. Utility impacts, they are, as I mentioned earlier, overhead utilities on the northern side. They will be temporarily or maybe permanently relocated. We will be coordinating with the utilities which are owned by Frontier and Eversource. There are some right-of-way impacts. Just want to point out that everything in red, anything within the red lines, are owned by the town of Norfolk. That's Smith Road. There is a small portion on the south side that will require a partial take for the flare wing wall, but also take some easements for the slope that supports the roadway itself, and also some temporary construction easement required just for the construction of the bridge. I will hand it off to Zach to talk about the right-of-way.
Thanks, Dionis. My name is Zachary Garino, and I'm a project coordinator with the department's Division of Rights of Way. Our office is responsible for acquiring the property rights needed for transportation projects. As mentioned in the presentation, this project will require the acquisition of property rights, so I'd like to give a brief overview of our acquisition process. Before I begin, I'd like to mention that the specific impacts are still being finalized, and they may change as the design progresses, and that any required property rights will be acquired in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes, Sections 13A73 and 13A98E, as well as the Uniform Act. Go to the next slide. So the right-of-way acquisition process begins once the design has progressed to a development milestone and all the impacts have been determined. At this point, each affected property owner will receive a formal letter of intent to acquire from our office, along with a property map which depicts the exact property rights to be acquired. And on the screen, here's an example of a property map that an owner may receive. It shows the existing conditions as well as the proposed improvements. Next, our office will determine the fair market value of those property rights which were depicted on the map and use that to establish an offer of just compensation. That offer will be sent out to the property owner in writing, and a right-of-way agent will be available to meet with the property owner and explain the project, go over the specific impacts to their property, and explain how the state arrived at its offer. The property owner will be given a reasonable amount of time, typically 30 days, to consider the state's offer and enter negotiations. When an agreement is reached, the department will prepare all the necessary paperwork to record the deed and property map on the town land records. However, if an agreement cannot be reached, in order to keep on schedule, the department may acquire the necessary property rights to its power of eminent domain. In that event, the state files a notice of condemnation in the Superior Court along with a monetary deposit in the amount of the state's offer. The owner would have 6 months from that date to file an appeal if they felt that the state's offer was inadequate. Whether or not the owner chooses to appeal, the money deposited in the court is available to be withdrawn by the owner. And it's important to note that the state only acquires property rights that are needed for this specific project. If there are any questions regarding the right-of-way acquisition process, I can answer them after the presentation. With that, I'll hand it back to Mark for Q&A. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Jonas and Zach. All right, at this time, we're going to conclude the formal presentation. We're now opening up to your questions. So please feel free to either, this quick slide too, the construction season expected to start in the spring of 2026. Last one season, which is 8 months from April to November. We're estimating about $3 million for construction. And again, 80% federal funds at minimum, 20% state at maximum, no cost to the town. And the schedule is still preliminary and subject to change. Now we'll open it up to your formal questions. We have a hand raised from Bart Wenrick. So. You.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, it's Bart. I had a couple of questions. What exactly is NDDB area? That's question number one. Question number two, how many property owners will require to acquiesce or give right away or allow building on their property?
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll answer the NDDB question. So NDDB stands for National Diversity Database. So it's to cover any species of concern, whether it's a state listed endangered species or a federally listed endangered species. If there's any of those concerns within a potential area of habitat, we either have to do an additional sweep or something else of that nature, or do kind of some type of protection measure or relocation. It depends. It depends what DEP would like us to do. Regarding property, I'll kick that over to Zach so he can answer that.
Yeah, I want to bring up that right-of-way impact slide again. At least at this time, looks like it's just the one property. But as I mentioned, as we do progressive design, there could be additional impacts. But correct me if I'm wrong, Jonas, I think it's just this one property at the moment. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Great. We have another hand up from Sloan Clevin. I apologize if I didn't say your name correctly. So one of them. I'm gonna, Bart, you still have your hand up here. If you have another question, you're still unmuted at the time right now.
Well, I did. So basically, if there is an objection or an agreement can't be met with the one individual that you need, basically to, access from, that could delay the construction of the bridge, right? I mean, I know how long eminent domain can take.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we account for in the schedule. Sometimes eminent domain can actually could be faster. It just depends on the situation. But if we're running tight on the schedule, then we'll have to proceed that way. So it's something we're keeping in mind. We always like to have a friendly closing with an owner if possible, but that's something that we do consider to maintain the schedule. And it could take a couple months. It really just depends on what's going on out there. But in this case, I could imagine that being another month or two once we get to that deadline.
Mhm.
Sloan, you had your hand up, but you also, I see you also asked a question in the Q&A. If you'd like to, do you have another question besides what's in the Q&A? Go ahead.
It's the same question. I was curious about what Matt Riska said at the beginning of the Zoom about how you're pursuing, or the town is pursuing, a temporary bridge at Smith Road. How would that change the schedule? And it sounds like it might mean that the old Goshen Road Bridge would happen sooner. And what is your projected time frame for that? Or do you not want to discuss that on this call?
Thank you for your question. I can give you kind of a overview at this time. So we initiated both these projects at the same time, and we proceeded with Smith Road first. Old Goshen is a couple months behind this one, so we're in the process of following the same track as Smith, where we'll be presenting the project to our management team and the department team in what's called a RSR, Rehabilitation Study Report, to present a recommended alternative, and then we'll present to the public later on in the fall. We're also evaluating for potential environmental concerns, whether it be historic, archaeological, anything that could be a potential hang up to the design schedule. So we're still in that evaluation phase, and as we get more information from our environmental units, we can coordinate with the town and make a determination if it's more viable to leapfrog this project with Old Goshen and let Old Goshen go first and have some type of temporary structure constructed at Smith. Right now, we're proceeding as anticipated with Smith Road while keeping Old Goshen on a similar fast track path. So it's still early at this point to see what we can do to leapfrog it, but we'll have a clearer picture most likely and hopefully in the fall of this year.
Thanks.
No problem. Again, any other questions anyone has, please feel free to ask in the Zoom Q&A, or you can raise your hand and ask. If you have a question later on, we still have a comment period open for 2 weeks. And even after that, if you have a question, you can ask Matt and he can relay it to us and we can do our best to answer it too. So, another question?
Yeah,
Sure.
I have another question. It sounds like you guys intend to clean up some of the debris from the old bridges that are lying in the brook. Like there's a lot of asphalt and twisted, rusted metal and debris that came down that's lying in the brook right now where those bridges were. Was I correct in understanding that you guys intend to remediate that when you start construction?
Yes, we will do what we can as far as any debris removal. One thing we have to be mindful of is for Army Corps permit requirements, we have to keep our impact area under a certain square footage in regulated areas. So it may need to be some level of a coordinated effort with the town, and it also depend on impacts to private property. So we obviously like to avoid creating a worse impact, whether it be potential for property impacts or disturbance of a regulated area, something of that nature. But we'll do what we can within the confines of the area, and then we can coordinate with the town to see if there's anything further that can be done.
Okay.
Bert, you have your hand up again?
I do. On the topic of temporary bridge, I find it interesting, in this situation where we have basically 2 bridges wiped out that service one location or one general area of homeowners, that there is no existing plan for a temporary bridge. Isn't that a safety concern? Why isn't that part of your plan? Wouldn't it make more sense to have a temporary on Smith, so now you don't have to detour one way, you can go both ways with that temporary bridge, and also ensure the safety of the residents down there and say any type of emergency? Just wondering why that's not part of that.
Okay, Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So I've been out to the site, visited with Matt and whatnot, and there is a viable detour route around to get out. If there was a situation where residents would be completely landlocked, that would be a different situation. But per the regulations, we don't participate in the cost of a temporary bridge if there is a viable detour route. If there's no detour route, and also it would have to be during construction. So we can't use federal or state funds for a temporary structure until the project begins construction. So we would still be on the same timetable for a temporary bridge. If the town wants to pursue a temporary bridge on their own, we're not stopping them from doing that. That is completely their prerogative. With regard to public safety and whatnot, Matt, I believe you looked at some of the response times and whatnot. I can't really comment on that, but if you could offer some insight, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously, I've met with everyone at Smith Road and Old Goshen Road a couple of times now. We are in the process of pursuing a temporary bridge. The temporary bridge would serve a number of different scenarios. One, obviously, make it a little bit easier for everyone on Old Goshen and Smith to access to Route 272. It would provide a direct service for our emergency services vehicles, our fire and ambulance departments, make plowing a little bit easier, but also it would allow for construction of the Old Goshen Road Bridge so we can get access equipment and materials there. Plus, we know that they're putting in a Verizon cell tower on Old Goshen Road, so it would alleviate some of that. I don't have all the details right at this minute, but I can tell you that we're working on a temporary bridge right now to see how quickly we can get it in place. As Mark said, that unfortunately, because there isn't an alternate route out of that area, the DOT's position is that they cannot assist us in funding that, which I completely understand considering the cost of both of these bridges, the Old Goshen and the Smith Road bridges, and the price tag that they're paying for those. But we are currently working on a plan to put a temporary bridge in, and I hope to have more information on that as early as tomorrow.
Great, thank you, Matt. John DeShazo, you have your hand up.
DeShazo. So the alternate route, I mean, if one tree comes down or if that road is icy, I mean, it's greater than an 8% grade coming down that S curve. One tree comes down and there's no alternate route. As it exists, if there is a structure fire in this area, before when we had the two bridges, since we're miles south of the hydrant district, one fire department tanker could keep enough flow to be roughly the equivalent of what you would get out of one hydrant. And a tanker relay could provide a couple thousand gallons a minute, which is a couple different, one or two hydrants. With the current situation with no bridges, a tanker relay would be almost impossible. And a structure fire, I would love to see the incident action plan for providing enough water supply for a structure fire down here.
Thank you for your question. I think as Matt stated, the town is evaluating a temporary bridge at Smith. Again, with regards to emergency services and whatnot, I can't really speak to that, but Matt, I'm sure you can coordinate with whether it be some kind of mutual aid or a different fire district or something of that nature.
Yeah, just to reiterate what I just said, just so everybody who's on the call knows, we actually, the group of from the DOT and CHA, we met this afternoon to discuss this project and, you know, what we can do. We had some good feedback on what the town could do for a temporary bridge. So as I said, I will have more information tomorrow, but we are working on it, and I think we've come up with a pretty good solution to get something in place sooner than later. And sooner, I mean, long before winter sets in. And we are all aware of the situation with the narrow, steep road on Old Goshen Road. So things are moving forward. I just don't have all the information right here at my fingertips.
Bart, you have your hand up again? Oh, thank you, Matt. Also, thank you for your question. John.
Just in response to what Matt just said and what John said, and first I want to say I really appreciate everybody's effort. And Matt, I know you get it. To John's point, yeah, we're heading into winter, and if we have a tree we've been getting more prolific and strong storms bringing down trees. That's a probability, that's a possibility, but also just general human safety. We have a lot of elderly residents down in that part of town. If there needs to be emergency response, we just had one not too long ago. Another town had to cover because our bus was in another township. They went to the bottom of Old Goshen and then realized the bridge was out and had to go all the way up to the detour, probably adding, I don't know, at least 10 minutes to their response time. That could be deadly. And that doesn't need a storm to happen. And so I'm just pointing that out. And again, I do appreciate everybody's time and energy, but just saying it's imperative, you know, for the safety of the residents in our community here in this area.
Thank you, Bart. No, we understand, and you know, we're working with the town however we can. It's just there are certain regulations on what the state can participate in as far as funding design for temporary structures. It's more of the federal regulations and whatnot. So we're doing what we can within what we're allowed to do as a department to assist the town for a temporary situation. And we understand.
Thank you.
Sloan, hand up again.
Thanks. Bart's comment just made me think of another issue that we have, and I don't know if the DOT can help with this, but all of us have been writing to Google Maps since the storm on July 9th last year washed out the two bridges to try and get them to update GPS to actually indicate that you cannot turn from 272 onto either Old Goshen Road or Smith Road. And it's never been fixed. And I'm wondering if if the DOT has any power to get GPS services updated, because all of us have tried, and people are constantly sent the wrong way. And it's actually kind of dangerous because in the dark, you're driving up 272 and Waze will tell you that you can turn on both of those roads. And if you do, and you're not, and you don't know, you could hit a concrete wall.
Yeah. Thank you for your question, comment. What I'll do tomorrow when I'm in my office, I'll coordinate with our highway systems people, because I know at minimum, we could probably update our traffic map because we have our statewide incident map to highlight any construction accidents, closed structures, etc. So at minimum, we can at least update our state map, and I'll see if they have any communication avenues with some of the bigger servers, whether it be Google Maps, Waze, etc. And I'll coordinate with that.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a real problem because people constantly are, and actually it happened with emergency services, were directed to the bottom of Old Goshen Road where there is no access.
Thank you. Thank you all for your questions and comments and concerns. If anyone else has any other questions, we'll keep this open for a few more minutes, And like we said, if anything comes to you, you can either call the monitored voicemail line and we'll be able to get back to you, or, reach out to us via email. I can put my email in the chat as well. If you have any questions that you come up with, you can always reach out to me and I'll do my best to answer them as well. Sue Frisch, if I'm saying that correctly. Go ahead, you're still on mute.
Yes, you did. I have a question about the NDDB maps. I think you mentioned somewhere in this study that there were no, that Hallbrook was not within the maps as of last December. We had occasion recently to look at them and look at Hall Meadowbrook, and there are definitely blob maps all down most, if not all, of Hall Meadowbrook, especially downstream of the Smith Road Bridge. I hope that you will be looking at that situation all along to evaluate the then current situation.
Yes, we reach out to Deep, and their mapping's a little more refined. That's on that than what's on this their webpage. So Anand or Dionis, I just want to coordinate back to you if you've heard back from Deep regarding that.
Yeah, I think I think that what we had in the presentation is what we had based on our last coordination. But as you know, permitting is a continuing process, and as we go through the permitting process, we'll definitely be taking more look along with us. The OEP will also be taking a look to make sure that we are in compliance with everything.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, man. Bart, you have your hand up again. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. I'm pretty focused on this temporary bridge situation. So if we are able to figure out how to get a temporary bridge installed, you guys are the bridge experts, you've had the surveys done. It seems to me Smith Road would be the most likely place to put the temporary. That's a question mark. And then secondly, how quickly can you pivot and fast track Old Goshen and put that on up first?
Sure. Quick. A couple things. So we would do, talking with Matt, we would put the temporary at Smith because it is an easier project site. So it'd be more viable to put up temporary structure there. As far as pivoting the schedule goes, we will we're still evaluating it, but within we just to give you a 1,000-foot view of our process. So in the case of this project, once we've completed this public info and comment period, we have to get what's called a categorical exclusion checklist. It's a federal document. Basically, it's something from the federal highway that allows us to proceed to final design. So that process we're gonna be wrapping up our final design until in October, just because we need to wrap up some coordination with the tribes. So that's another aspect too. We have to do coordination with all the tribes, whether or not there's an instance or what, they need to screen it. They have 30 days to respond. They respond back, no concern, then that completes our process. So those items just take a little bit of time. So we'll be done with preliminary design on this project in October. If we wanted to pivot, right now we're in the CHA is in the process of finalizing our preliminary design reports, and we'll present those to the department sometime in the middle of next month. They're going to bring it in for review, middle of October, formal meeting, public info, roughly in November. If we get back a favorable environmental review, we can compress our schedule, and then proceed with design approval somewhat soon after the public info meeting. Again, these are a lot of variables depending on a lot of other factors that really are unfortunately not in our direct control. What is in our direct control is directing the designers on how fast to move. If we tell the designers that they have the green light to move as fast as they can in Old Goshen, we can do everything we can to expedite. It will depend on other regulatory hurdles too. If we get favorable permits from the Army Corps, that will also compress our design time as well. So we've put some, I don't want to say wiggle room in the schedule, but there are certain things we can do to compress our design time, but the big hangups could be permits and rights of way. So a lot of things are in the air, will depend on what we hear back from the regulatory agencies, but we'll know later on in the year what we can do to accelerate the schedule for Old Goshen. We don't want that to be a hang up though. If the town still wants to pursue the temporary structure on Smith, that's still the town's prerogative because it'll still be a little ways away. So we can still evaluate those things, but we're still going to do everything we can to accelerate design schedules.
I appreciate your answer, and I feel like you really got a handle on it. I do think my fellow residents in this area feel a temporary bridge is imperative. 2 years is just too long. Under best circumstances, 2 years is too long to wait for a bridge and to only have one access in and out of the community. But it sounds like you guys are prepared to, like I said, pivot if we can get this temporary bridge in. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for all your comments, all your questions. This is very helpful for our design team. Again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask them now, or reach out to us. You can email me. You can email the DOT FLBP in that email box. We'll get back to you. Okay, at this time, we're going to conclude the meeting. Again, thank you all for attending. We appreciate your input, appreciate your concerns, and we're going to continue to proceed with design. And thank you and have a pleasant evening.